It's here, the big one, some of the best good news stories from 2025. The fact you're here looking for some reasons 2025 was good probably shows what type of year it's been. If you're new here, I'm Sam and I make videos highlighting good news and solutions to some of the world's biggest problems, and I do monthly roundups of positive stories that you might have missed. And if you've been here before, welcome back my friend, and if you've enjoyed these roundups this year, tap that like button and I'll keep them coming in 2026 too. I've asked a few friends for their favourite good news stories of 2025, so keep an eye to see who pops up in this video. So let's get into it. Here's some good news from 2025 you might have missed, starting with January. 2025 started with news that the Democratic Republic of Congo is creating the world's largest forest reserve, spanning 540,000 kilometers, the same size as France. The Congo Basin is the largest remaining tropical forest in the world, so a newly announced Kivu-Kinshasa Green Corridor based on the success of Virunga National Park will help restore this critical habitat, protect endangered species and fight deforestation. Huge news was announced in the UK as the National Trust announced a plan to restore nature across almost 250,000 acres of land across England, Wales and Northern Ireland. To put this into perspective, that's 10 times the amount of landscape is restored over the last decade. And across Africa, community-run conservancies are proving that local stewardship works. In Kenya's Masai Mara, community conservancies make up just 25% of the ecosystem, but contain 83% of its large mammals, showing wildlife thrives when communities lead conservation. And in more conservation news in January, India has doubled its tiger population in just over a decade and is now home to more than 3,600 tigers, 75% of the world's total, despite having just 18% of global tiger habitat. A new study credits this success to anti-poaching efforts, habitat protection, engaging local communities, and reducing human-wildlife conflict, proving that tigers can coexist with people. Barcelona celebrated improved air quality for the second year in a row, thanks to ongoing efforts to reduce pollution across the city. And from cleaner air to cleaner water, in England, clean water campaigners won a major victory after United Utilities dropped its legal fight and released sewage discharge data for Lake Windermere that it had been trying to keep from the public, proving that transparency and accountability can win when communities stand up for the environment. Now let's head into February. In a massive tipping point for the right to repair movement, all 50 states in the US have now introduced right to repair legislation. These laws aim to give consumers the freedom to fix their own devices by requiring manufacturers to provide access to parts, tools, and repair information. While not all states have passed the laws yet, the fact that every state has introduced a bill shows the power of grassroots activism in driving real policy change. In big news for travel lovers, one of London's biggest train stations is gearing up for a huge expansion that could bring direct train routes to cities like Frankfurt, Zurich and even Milan over the next 5 years. There's no official start date yet, but services likely won't begin before 2030, as operators need time to acquire trains and secure permissions. If all goes to plan, this expansion could reshape how people travel between the UK and Europe, making high-speed rail a more practical and sustainable choice. And after plans stalled for a new dam in Czech Republic, 8 beavers stepped in to save the day by building 12 natural dams, saving local people €1.2 million. And one of the coolest stories that I came across was about an underwater speaker that can play songs to bring coral reefs back to life. Scientists from Woods Hole Oceanographic Institution discovered that playing the sounds of healthy coral reefs through underwater speakers can encourage coral larvae into returning to damaged areas, helping them recover. In the Caribbean, coral exposed to these reef sounds settled 70% more often than control groups, with some spots seeing up to 700% more settlement, offering a simple but powerful tool to help restore the 25% of reefs we've lost over the last 30 years. March, very fittingly, started with marches across the United States. Across the US, thousands of people took to national parks to stand up for their incredible natural beauty and those helping to protect it, with protests over the 3,000 job cuts that could put America's most cherished landscapes at risk. Following the protests, a federal judge stepped in. In most cases, the dismissal was found to be unlawful, and most were able to keep their jobs. 5 lions that were rescued from Ukraine are now safe in England, taking their first ever steps on grass at the Big Cat Sanctuary in Kent. After enduring trauma, neglect and concrete cages and being used for illegal breeding or kept as exotic pets, the lions are now settling into their new surroundings thanks to £500,000 in public donations as part of a fundraising campaign. In other good news for lions, the population of Asiatic lions in Gujarat, India surged by 32% since 2020, reaching an impressive 891 individuals. Over the past 3 decades, their numbers have grown steadily by 25 to 30% every 5 years, showing just how far conservation efforts have come in protecting the species that were once on the brink of extinction. And an African giant pouched rat named Carolina helped stop nearly 400,000 tuberculosis cases by sniffing out infection. Rats have a keen sense of smell, which allows them to detect the bacteria associated with tuberculosis in phlegm samples from infected patients. The use of rats like Carolina has increased the detection rate of TB in Ethiopia and Tanzania by 40%, with the equivalent microscope test only being 20 to 40% accurate. Now Carolina can take a much-deserved retirement, and my last story from March takes us to the UK. In March, researchers from Oxford University developed a method to destroy PFAS, also known as forever chemicals, the persistent pollutants found in everyday items like Teflon tape and non-stick pans. The breakthrough allows scientists to break down these harmful chemicals while recovering valuable fluorine that can be reused to make medicines. The discovery happened accidentally when lab equipment started degrading during experiments. Before we head into April, let's hear from one of my friends about their favourite good news stories of the year.
Hey Sam, it's Dr. Amir here, and my favourite good news story is the one about the organisation called ReShark, reintroducing endangered sharks into the wild. Now sharks are my absolute favourite fish, and yes, they are fish, and they've been around on this planet since before the dinosaurs, yet 37% are threatened with extinction today. So when you shared this story, it really did make me happy.
For April, let's take a trip to France. Over in the City of Love, Parisians expressed their own love, or amour should I say, for green spaces, and have voted to pedestrianise and green 500 more streets across the city. This means that when completed, more than 1 in 10 streets in Paris, locally known as green lungs, will be fully pedestrianised. As part of this green transformation, Paris transformed one of its busiest squares into an urban forest. Over 2,500 square metres of concrete were ripped up in front of City Hall, and it was replaced with 4 groves, 170 trees and thousands of plants. They'll help cool the area during heat waves, clean the air and create space for birds, insects and shade-loving plants, and people too. And one thing I learned about green spaces is they're not just beautiful, but they're secretly fighting plastic pollution too. A new study from China found that plant-filled rooftops can capture an incredible 97.5% of microplastic particles from rainfall, with researchers estimating that Shanghai's existing green roofs could already be trapping 56.2 metric tons of microplastics annually. In other plastic pollution news, research during this month found that coastal pollution around Australian cities has decreased by 39% over the past decade, with some areas now completely free of debris. And this next story is about 2 young minds also taking on pollution. 2 young scientists from Slovakia and Czech Republic won the Earth Prize 2025 for developing a pioneering water purification system that's tackling one of the world's most urgent but overlooked issues. Their system uses a never-before-seen combo of light and cold plasma to remove harmful pollutants and antibiotic-resistant bacteria from water. Now let's head into May, where train tracks were being used in an interesting way. And if you're enjoying this video so far, tap that like and subscribe button down below to start 2026 with more reasons to feel hopeful. Over in Switzerland, they're turning train tracks into solar farms as the country pilots its first solar power plant on active railway tracks. If the pilot proves successful, it could scale up quickly, potentially covering railways across Switzerland and supplying up to 2% of the country's electricity needs. It's a brilliant example of using overlooked spaces to meet growing energy demands, all while preserving natural landscapes. A 19-year-old from Slovakia won $100,000 for inventing a cheaper and faster way to make antiviral drugs out of corn husks. Adam Kowalczyk found a new way to produce Galidosavir, a drug designed to help fight dangerous viruses like COVID-19, Ebola and Zika. His breakthrough also slashed the cost of producing the drug from $75 per gram to just $12.50. I also came across another creative way agricultural waste is being used this month. Indo-wood from India, have found a way to make everything from doors, decking and furniture using rice. Rice husks, the outer shell left behind after rice is harvested, are turned into strong, versatile boards that are waterproof, flame resistant and 100% recyclable, helping reuse agricultural waste and prevent trees being cut down for wood. New Caledonia has just made history by banning seabed mining across all of its ocean territory for the next 50 years, an area of ocean roughly the size of Egypt. This French Pacific territory is considered a global biodiversity hotspot, home to nearly a third of the world's remaining pristine coral reefs and over 9,000 marine species, many of which are found nowhere else on Earth. Seabed mining stirs up plumes of toxic sediment, disrupts ancient ecosystems and threatens species that science is only just beginning to understand. New Caledonia's long-term ban sends a clear message that protecting ocean health matters more than just short-term profits. For my last story of May, let me introduce you to my next guest to share their favourite good news story of 2025.
Hi Sam, Sabrina here from Project Everyone. Now, this year has not been without its challenges, but it did deliver some real reasons for hope, for people and for planet. Global Fund, the world's leading funder for HIV, TB and malaria, secured $11 billion, funding that can save tens of millions of lives by 2029. And on gender-based violence, momentum grew from Europe to Africa. Italy criminalised femicide, and across the continent, the African Union adopted a landmark convention to end gender-based violence for women and girls. So progress is happening, often quietly, but at scale. Thanks for making space for it, Sam.
June started with a beautiful end for one individual. A man in Maine became the first person in North America to be buried in a mushroom coffin, marking a groundbreaking moment for green burials. Developed by Dutch company Loop Biotech, the Loop living cocoon is made using mycelium, the root system of fungi, and it's part of a growing movement to replace traditional burials which use toxic embalming chemicals, hardwood and concrete that can pollute the soil for decades. Once buried, it naturally breaks down within 45 days, helping to regenerate soil health and turning the body into a source of life for the forests around it. On the subject of new life, a group in Bristol brought new life to an empty department store. A not-for-profit called Campus Skateboarding transformed an empty department store named Debenhams into an indoor skate park called Shreddenhams. The 6-month pop-up is part of a campaign to help raise awareness and show how derelict spaces can be used in city centres and raise profits to put back into community projects. And with summer starting to heat up, another community came together for a beautiful reason. In Andalusia, summer temperatures can reach over 40 degrees Celsius, which is especially dangerous for elderly residents and vulnerable groups that struggle with extreme heat. So 300 local women got together to tackle the problem and spent 3 years crocheting a massive shade canopy. It stretches 60 meters long and covers 500 square meters, made entirely from yarn. Not only is it a stunning alternative to plastic canopies, but it's also drawn more visitors to the town, turning a local craft into a tourist attraction that also helps address climate impacts. After a 15-year David versus Goliath battle, citizens in Texas beat the fossil fuel giant Exxon in court, and they now must pay a $14.25 million penalty for nearly a decade of illegal air pollution. The Supreme Court rejected Exxon's final appeal, delivering a massive win for the community and for environmental law, and this ruling sends a clear message. Even the biggest corporations can't ignore environmental laws or try to rewrite them. Now let's head into July and visit a country with one of my favourite cuisines. In July, Ethiopia shattered the world record for tree planting by planting an incredible 714.7 million tree seedlings in a single day, surpassing their ambitious target of 700 million. This historic effort is part of Prime Minister Abiy Ahmed's Green Legacy initiative, launched in 2019, which has now resulted in over 40 billion trees planted across the country. These next few stories are about medical breakthroughs, starting with a life-saving device called Organox, developed at the University of Oxford, that keeps human organs alive outside the body for longer, and in July it won the UK's most prestigious engineering award. This innovation has led to a 30% increase in transplant rates, drastically shorter wait times, and has enabled over 6,000 transplants across 4 continents and 12 countries so far. In a world-first clinical breakthrough, a cutting-edge gene therapy is helping deaf people to hear just 1 month after a single injection. Within 6 months, all participants' ability to hear improved, going from barely hearing extremely loud noises to being able to detect everyday sounds like speech and conversation. And scientists say that this is just the beginning. They're now working to target more common genes linked to deafness, bringing hope to millions around the world. And the last medical breakthrough of July is a revolutionary suit designed in Sweden that's helping people with mobility difficulties move more easily. The Exopulse Molly suit uses built-in electrodes to send gentle electrical pulses that activate weak muscles and relax tense ones, acting like a translator between the brain and body for people with conditions like cerebral palsy, MS stroke and spinal cord injuries. People can wear it for just 1 hour at home and the effects last up to 2 days, offering a non-invasive alternative to medications and surgery. Before we get into August, I want to say a big thank you to everyone who's supported me this year by watching and engaging with these videos, and to my Patreon and YouTube community who help me produce them and shine a light on people fighting for our planet, because often the mainstream media doesn't seem to give them much airtime. I want to keep fighting to get the good out there, and if you'd like to support me in that, the best way is to become a patron by scanning this QR code here or tapping the link down below. I also post a bunch more good news stories every week over there, exclusive content and sources to all of my stories. Plus you get a credit in my YouTube videos too. And if it's easier, I've also set up YouTube membership, so all you need to do is tap that join button down below over here. Thank you so much once again for being here, and now let's time travel back to August to hear about some wins for nature. Mexico, Guatemala and Belize are creating a tri-national nature reserve to protect the Mayan jungle. It'll become the second biggest nature reserve in Latin America behind the Amazon rainforest. New South Wales in Australia officially confirmed the Great Koala National Park, adding 176,000 hectares of protected forest to safeguard more than 12,000 koalas and other threatened species. The move includes an immediate logging ban and marks one of the largest expansions of protected land in the state's history. Mexico's jaguar population has jumped 30% since 2010 thanks to conservation efforts that are helping the iconic big cat make a slow but hopeful comeback. A new national census counted over 5,300 jaguars across Mexico, with the Yucatan Peninsula home to the largest population, and conservation groups are now calling for stronger safeguards and more public awareness to keep this progress going. So Becky, what's your favourite good news story of 2025?
So my favourite piece of good news that's come out of 2025 is that it's 50 years since we reintroduced the white-tailed eagle. So, these amazing birds, like wingspan like a barn door, and, they're back with us. They'd completely gone. We'd persecuted them out of existence. Now they're back. That is a great, great good news story. A whole load of people, including our SPV, have worked on it for 50 years, literally. We introduced them up the west coast of Scotland, and now they've even been spotted flying over London. Amazing.
And bison also made a massive comeback in Yellowstone National Park, going from a population of just a few dozen in the 2000s to 5,000 today. For September, I'm passing the mic to my South African amigo Nandi to tell you about her favourite story of the year.
Hey Sam, it's Nandi here. My favorite good news story this year was by far a cafe called Dialogue Express Cafe in Stratford, London, and it's run by Dialogue Hub, a social enterprise creating opportunities and visibility for deaf and hard of hearing communities. The barristers are deaf or hard of hearing, and customers encouraged to order using British Sign Language. Thank you so much from the bottom of my heart for just shining a light on such incredible stories and just raising awareness for all the good happening in the world. We salute you. We appreciate you. Keep the good work coming. Thank you so much, my brother. I'm sending you so much love. Mwah.
One of the biggest wins in September was that a historic global agreement to protect the world's ocean and reverse damage to marine life is officially becoming international law. It's called the Global Ocean Treaty, and it finally gives us a way to create marine protected areas in international waters. Think of these like national parks but in the ocean, that block harmful activity like industrial fishing and allow marine life to recover. Right now, only 1% of international waters are protected, but the treaty provides a roadmap to protect 30% of our ocean by 2030. It officially kicks in this January now that 60 countries have signed it into law, and that number's already jumped to 75. Going from the high seas to our solar system, solar power is taking off in Africa. 20 African countries broke solar energy records by tripling their solar panel imports in the past year, surging from 9 gigawatts to 15 gigawatts of capacity, signalling the start of Africa's green energy transformation. Despite having the world's greatest potential for solar power, Africa currently produces only 4% of global solar generation, meaning this boom could be just the beginning. And another boost for solar was research by the RSPB and University of Cambridge that found that nature-friendly solar farms contained more bird species and individual birds than surrounding farmland, with mixed habitat sites supporting nearly 3 times as many birds as adjacent arable land. And the good news for clean energy continued into October. Renewable energy overtook coal as the world's largest source of electricity for the first time. A huge rise in solar, and to a lesser extent wind, pushed renewables to generate 5,072 terawatt-hours of electricity in the first half of 2025, overtaking coal at 4,896 terawatt-hours, according to new data from Ember. As a result, renewables now make up 34.3% of global electricity, while coal share has dropped to 33.1%, marking a historic turning point in how the world powers itself. Building off this, a study from UCL found that investment in wind energy generated a net benefit of £104 billion for UK consumers between 2010 and 2023, lowering electricity bills and cutting natural gas costs, even after accounting for green subsidies. And from clean air to cleaner oceans, the Ocean Cleanup, a non-profit aiming to remove 90% of floating ocean plastic by 2040 that have a variety of plastic collecting innovations, announced they collected an average of 3.2 tonnes of plastic every hour for the past year. And some governments even started taking action against polluters. After years of grassroots campaigning, companies in the UK must now pay for the plastic waste they create. Payments will go directly to local authorities to cover the actual costs of collecting, sorting and disposing of packaging waste. From 2026, the fees become eco-modulated, meaning harder to recycle packaging will cost companies more, while easier to recycle materials attract lower fees, creating financial incentives for producers to design better packaging. And one of the coolest innovations I came across this month was NASA engineers who found a way to put out fires using sound waves. The sound waves, officially called infrasound pressure waves, knock oxygen molecules out of the way before the fire has a chance to use them for combustion. They can extinguish fires from up to 10 feet away and even prevent fires from starting in the first place. We start November by travelling to the US. Gun violence dropped dramatically across more than 75% of the 150 US cities with the most shootings, marking one of the greatest declines ever recorded. The downward trend spans red and blue cities in every region, with places like Detroit and Philadelphia seeing their lowest rates in decades. Experts credit federal funding that restored over 1.2 million local government jobs lost during the pandemic, including teachers, counsellors, violence interrupters, and youth workers who directly engage with at-risk communities. The UN Food and Agriculture Organization reported that deforestation has slowed in every region over the past decade, offering hope for the world's forests. The planet is now losing 10.9 million hectares of forest annually, down from 17.6 million hectares in the 1990s. 1/5 of the world's forests are now in legally protected areas, with 251 million hectares of additional forest protected since 1990. The UK announced a £75 million plan to phase out animal testing by developing cutting-edge alternatives. The roadmap will fund new methods including organ-on-a-chip systems that mimic human organs using real cells, AI to predict medicine safely, and 3D bioprinted tissues that could create realistic human tissue samples for testing, providing lifelike environments for studying human biology and checking if substances are toxic. And in another win for animal welfare, Poland announced it's banning fur farming after being Europe's largest producer, with all farms closing within 8 years. This will help save 3 million animals every year. There was also news in November that China's CO2 emissions have been flat or falling for 18 months, with the world's biggest polluter on track to hit its peak emissions target well ahead of its 2030 deadline. The country added 240 gigawatts of solar and 61 gigawatts of wind in the first 9 months of 2025, with renewables growing so rapidly that emissions stayed flat despite rising electricity demand. Meanwhile, the EU Parliament approved a plan to cut greenhouse gas emissions by 90% by 2040. December brought us a bunch of wins for Indigenous communities and knowledge, starting in Kenya. Kenya's High Court overturned a law that threatened farmers with 2 years in prison for sharing traditional seeds, a huge win for food security and traditional knowledge. The case had been filed by 15 smallholder farmers who are members of community seed banks that have been preserving and sharing seeds for years. Over in Borneo, Indigenous activists filed a successful lawsuit against a palm oil company, forcing them to pause their clearing of local forests. Brazil officially recognised lands for 27 Indigenous peoples and committed to protecting 59 million additional hectares over the next 5 years, after over 5,000 Indigenous advocates made their voices impossible to ignore at COP30. And a Native American tribe, the Southern Sierra Miwok Nation, reclaimed around 900 acres of ancestral land along Yosemite National Park's border, after being forced out of it during the gold rush 175 years ago. And for one of our last stories, let's head to the land down under. Australia announced it's on track to become the first country to eliminate cervical cancer by 2035, with rates dropping to 6.3 per 100,000 women in 2021. For the first time since records began in 1982, no cases were diagnosed in women under 25. A new at-home screening option made testing more accessible for women who previously avoided doctor visits, while 5-year survival rates improved to 76.8%. And these last two stories are also about medical wins helping younger generations thrive. A groundbreaking gene therapy cured aggressive leukemia in 16-year-old Alyssa, who was treated 3 years ago and is still cancer-free. The technique, called base editing, modified donor white blood cells to resist chemotherapy, stop them from attacking her body, and help them fight the cancer, before a bone marrow transplant rebuilt her immune system. In addition to this, 2/3 of patients in the same trial have gone into deep remission after all other options had failed. And 3-year-old Oliver became the first person ever to receive gene therapy for Hunter syndrome, a rare condition that usually proves fatal before age 20, and a year later, he's developing normally. And that's a wrap. Thank you so much for watching. Whether this is your first video with me or you've been watching throughout the year, I really appreciate you. Tap the like button if you've enjoyed this video and subscribe if you haven't already. Have a great 2026. I'll be here for you every month to remind you that even amongst the doom and gloom, good is out there in the world and it's worth fighting for, as Samwise Gamgee once said. I'll see you soon, my friend. Bye!